down, Wayne. Don't count down.
Down, count down.
Yeah.
What's that from? I don't recognize that. I didn't get the reference.
Oh, I'm showing my age. It's Wayne's World, which is now 30 odd years old this year.
Confession time. I know of that movie, and I basically know what it's about, but I've never seen it. And
Okay,
a few years ago, I was like, I should probably see this just because, like, I want to be like a lot of people like have been influenced by this movie, but I'm like, I don't know. I didn't find the motivation to watch it. At some point, I probably will.
There's bits of it that definitely would still hold up, I reckon. But there's also bits of it that will have aged hideously because it's a 90s film. So there's always that. But no, but in terms of the reference, and there's a point in which their show that they had that they were running from their basement gets taken over effectively. They get some investment. They get to go to a new fancy studio, and they're doing the countdown to the camera being on, and the last few bits of the countdown is silent, right? And he's like sitting there watching the guy count down, yeah, and he's nodding his head, and they're like, Wayne, don't nod your head. We can see that because as soon as it goes live, his head's still like, yeah. And so whenever we count down to record this show, I end up feeling the same. Like I'm trying to count down, but I'm aware. Anyway, listeners, you won't get to see me bobbing my head in a silly fashion or making any sense of this references, but maybe YouTube folk might get what I'm saying.
What show is this anyway?
What show is this anyway? That's a great question.
I think this is Welcome to... Hang on. This is Waiting for Review, a show about the majestic indie developer lifestyle. Join your scintillating hosts, Dave and Daniel, and let's hear about a tiny slice of their thrilling lives. Join us while waiting for review. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Daniel. That was a very good read. Straight into it. Straight into the voice. Love it.
Gotta do the really good segues.
Yes. I don't miss segues, to be honest. It took me back to storyboards for a second.
Oh, those kind of segues. I was thinking about the two-wheeled vehicles.
Oh no, they're okay.
I've never.
I guess.
I kind of wanna ride one of those. Do you ride segways or do you drive them? I guess you
don't
ride
know.
them,
The thing I feel about that is intuitively I'd want to go as fast as I possibly could on one just to see what it was capable of, and then I think damage would incur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what gets damaged first, the device or you?
Yeah, why not both?
Both. ¿Por qué no los dos?
Yeah. Indeed.
Anyway, how's it going? What are you doing?
What am I doing? Oof.
What kind of energy are you bringing to the show today?
Possibly a little bit of headless chickening on my own direction for my own apps and where things are at, and combined with a healthy dose of cynicism about Apple's direction at the moment.
Fair.
Or maybe an unhealthy dose. I'm not sure it's actually benefiting me to be so cynical right now.
Is it getting into cranky old man territory?
Yeah, definitely. I've hit middle age, Daniel, for sure.
Do you want to just start talking about it? Like what are you cynical about?
We've spoken about it on the show before, and I think like some of this is about Apple's direction in general, and for me, it's sort of certainly got triggered, for want of a better phrase, by how Apple looked like they weren't really operating in good faith with the EU, and everything around that, and that's exhibiting still today. Like when the new Apple Intelligence powered things start to happen, I've been reading accounts that the EU won't get that right now.
Yeah, that's just that is so petty.
Yeah, and we're going to see more of that, I think, from Apple before the penny sort of starts to drop, that you're really just burning goodwill. It's odd. But then, yeah, combine that with other things like we've seen in the news in the last week, and this will date the show, but fair enough. Patreon and the way Apple are trying to claim revenue from all of Patreon's interactions that pass through iOS. Anything that sort of touches it, they want to have some level of cut from that. You might be able to
Yeah.
describe that better than I just have, but I've read bits and bobs about it, and it's definitely looks like, oh god, do they have to do this? This sort of seems a bit
Yeah, they have
negative.
like basically the backstory is there's a link, there's going to be a link in the show notes, but
Mm-hmm.
basically the backstory is Apple now has seriously claimed, as far as I understand this, if I understand this correctly, that because Patreon has an app on the App Store, Apple is entitled to all, like, to a cut of all money that goes through Patreon. Like, I,
Yeah.
it boggles the mind. Did you know, by the
Yeah.
way, that if you listen to this podcast on an iPhone, that means that we are now entitled to 30% of Apple's revenue, like minus the 20 billion that Google pays them to keep their monopoly, I think.
Yeah, that's been the other thing in the news recently, right? Google's antitrust and that whole relationship. Um, I feel like, I mean, we could go all over the place on the show with these things, but I kind of want to just sort of summarize with, it leaves me feeling like there's kind of, for me now, there's a duality of Apple, and perhaps for other people this has existed for a long time, but I think I've come to this conclusion late in some ways, and that is to say that there's the there's the Apple I love in terms of, their products, and even all the way through to the development environment. Xcode's issues to be damned, I still love using it. I forgive it for not auto completing as well as it might and other issues, but there's that Apple. There's the Apple where I get in my developer flow with Swift and Swift UI, and I'm making cool things and I'm having fun and I love the products. And then on the other side, the other wolf, as it were.
Oh, there's two wolves inside of Apple.
Yeah. The other wolf is the one that's basically behaving like a mafia boss over these things, right? And trying to go, well, that's a nice revenue model there. It'd be a shame if somebody cut off your access, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I find it hard to square that. I really do. I feel like, and there's other things where App Store review is routinely a hurdle for people rather than necessarily being a positive experience, right? I expect to get rejected with every new app I put in the store now, first time round. And almost every dev with an app in the store has a bit of a war story about that. The amount of which usually end up with, and I didn't really have to change very much, if at all. It was just a case of convincing the reviewer. Like, so any one of these threads I could pull, but I think it really is the duality. There's the, I love the tech, I love the dev, and then seeing news articles where Apple's kind of behaving, I think, quite poorly in terms of how they're operating over revenue and their commitment to good faith working within the EU. I think I call that very much into question. It looks like they're trying to be deliberately obstructive.
Yeah.
Um, and I can't make excuses for it. I'm not a John Gruber of the world or whatever, right? I can't just drink the fruit juice
Yeah.
and
The pendulum that has always
mm,
existed within Apple between like hyper capitalist and very principled has swung
mm-hmm.
over so far into like hyper capitalist territory that, yeah, it doesn't feel as good anymore. It doesn't feel as nice. It's not the it almost feels like Apple is not the default choice for people like us anymore, or it might be in the future. Like I've
Yes.
seen a post the other day. A friend of ours was going to a developer meetup with a lot of Apple or Swift developers, and one of the
Mm-hmm.
main topics of the whole meetup was like, so where do we go now? Like, do we leave? Do we stay?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there's a sort of feeling within within the larger community. It seems like not everybody, of course, but like enough people are
No.
like, is this Does this have a future now? And I think even
Yeah,
if Apple kind of pulls through and like finds itself again, this is going to have long-lasting negative consequences for them.
it will. It will. And actually, you've reminded me of something within all of this, which is I feel like I've kind of seen this exhibit in another area of my life with Apple in the past. So one of the things about my the apps that I've got in the store, one of the reasons I play with real time video is because I used to be, part of the, and still am, I guess, part of the real time video VJ community, as it were. And these are guys who, they run the visuals at shows. They go and do all that sort of event video production where you've got projectors and all the rest of it going on. And I remember I feel like probably about 10, 12 years ago, there was a shift. Um, and you had, at one point, the MacBook Pro was sort of the ideal, the default, because of what it was capable of and the consistency and everything else, and the uh, the video architecture as well was pretty good for that end of stuff. So you had a lot of things that you could play with as well that all added up very well. And then there was this shift, and Apple started to burn some goodwill, and it was largely around things like the graphics cards and that end of stuff, right? And desktop machines not being able to have you know update their GPUs very well, and
Oh
external
yeah, I remember
GPUs
they
never
had
really
beef with
happened.
Nvidia or something, right? Like they still have.
Yeah, yeah, and it all got a bit odd, and the fallout of some of this was that people started to build Windows machines and go over to having Windows rigs. And so I think for me, conceptually, it went from being a community that was very focused towards, the Mac is what artists love to use, and a really lovely environment to play in, through to people then going, well, I can't really buy the kit at the level I want for a decent price here. I'm going to go and build a Windows machine because like the main software that people use for this runs on either. Um, and now, yeah, Apple is a much smaller part of that community these days. Like, people still use MacBook Pros, but a lot more people are also using Alienware laptops or building um, machines that run in rack mounted setups that they can then just wheel out and are nicely transportable and that sort of thing. Um, yeah. So anyway, within all of that, I guess I feel I've seen a shift there before, and what you end up with on the other side is a lot more fragmentation, and you end up with from a software development perspective, I think you end up in a situation where you need to be available in more than one place to be, very successful. Um, and I think this is going to apply to more niches over time, and probably does apply really to a lot more niches. And I
Yeah, because
think,
this time it's about everyone who makes money in the App Store, right?
yeah, yeah,
You
exactly. And so it's
included.
for,
So, like, how do
yeah,
you feel about like, do you feel threatened right now by this development? Because right now nothing has changed for you, right?
yeah, nothing's really changed for me, and I can keep making my apps, and they're doing okay, and that's fine. There's a route there, but I think looking at the mafia boss behavior, if you like, I look and I'm like, there's I could build certain things and then not know whether, Apple's going to say, actually, we reject you because of blah blah blah, and a similar cut is desired. For example, I've thought about having uh, a content delivery system where people can buy video content to use within my apps. I'd probably have a back end for that, and on the one hand, I can do all of that with in-app purchases, and that's probably a really good way to do it, and actually to use the in-app purchase to unlock the content of the server. Um, I feel like I either do that, or then I do it entirely on the web outside of Apple, and it's literally just I've got a login screen if you have an account, and I can't advertise it then in the app because of Apple, right? Because if I do, they're going to want their cut. And even if I have the login and the rest of it, if on review I get somebody goes through and looks at the site and they decide that according to item number blah 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 in the App Store rules, I'm sort of stepping out of line. Boom. Do I lose my app? Do I just not get the next build through review? You know?
Yeah. At the same time, like
Uh,
I'm not saying you're wrong or anything. I'm just like trying to explore this because
yeah,
that was the case 2 years ago, right?
I was
Like
going to say
2 years
that's not
ago,
new.
it was the
It,
same, but at the same time,
it's
the
not new.
feeling has kind of changed.
Yeah. So this is the thing. I know if I wanted to pinpoint it, the feeling that's changed is a view that there's good faith, or a view that there's uh, stick to the rules and everything will be okay. Well, I'm sure Patreon were feeling they stuck to the rules, and one of the things I've read is that they've sort of been in a bit of a grey area for quite a long time with stuff. Well, yeah, okay. But that means they were still getting stuff approved, they were still operating in this space. And that's the bit that gives me unease, right? It's like, something could shift, and all of a sudden all of that effort, all of that time that I've put into building my apps up and building a business up is effectively what it is. I mean, it doesn't feel like it right now because I'm still at such a low level with everything. It's in that sort of, it's a hobby that's bringing in a bit of extra revenue, if I'm honest, right now. But there's that feeling I can do all of that effort, and then Apple just decides, yeah, nah, off you go. And or if I don't build in a way that considers what Apple might do,
Mm.
then I run incurring some risk myself. And again, none
Yeah.
of this is new, but seeing how they operate at a higher level in the news definitely lets me then feel like, right, I haven't got a lot of trust here. I think is
Right.
probably
I
what it
feel like
boils
Apple
down to.
used to be mostly the good guys
Yeah,
ish. Like, I
yeah,
mean, of course, still a large U.S. American corporation or whatever, but still, like you had like a certain amount of, yeah, they're mostly doing the right thing. They have some principles, and now
yep,
they seem to be going into just, oh yeah, let's just rent seek as much as we can, and
mm-hmm,
consequences be damned. We just want to extract the money as efficiently as possible, and that makes you lose a certain like respect.
yeah, yeah. And if I think about look at this just purely as a user, even we're seeing this now with the next version of Mac OS, and the amount of people have compared it to Vista in terms of the amount of sort of like pop-ups that occur when you try to, I think it's installing an app that's not notarized. It's more obstructive. So I think the thing I saw, I've not installed the betas, I've not been playing with it right now, but it was something like you could give permission to be able to run this app, but then it's still going to ask you a week later,
Oh,
right?
no, I'm
It's
sorry.
not a
I'm sorry. I
permanent
actually
thing.
looked into this, and you're conflating two
Yep.
different things.
Thank
So
you.
the week
Help
later
me.
thing is
Yep.
about screen recording, and it's still
Okay.
very unclear. Like, people are still trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure this out, because what we know right now is that on the current betas that I haven't run myself, so this is secondhand knowledge. But on the current
Mm-hmm.
betas, if you have an app that wants to record the screen, for example, if you want to share your screen on a Zoom call or whatever, then the screen has changed from, hey, can Zoom record your screen, yes or no, or activate or enable this in the settings. It has
Yep.
changed from that to, all right, allow, like, this the app Zoom wants to use the unsecure way of recording your entire screen instead of using the native window picker to select a window to share. Do you
Okay.
still want to allow this, question mark? And
Yep.
that will ask you every month or after every reboot.
Okay.
However, there's no currently, as far as I've heard, there's no like secure window picker thing. Like apparently, like maybe there's an API that hasn't been implemented yet, or it hasn't been discovered yet, or it
Right.
isn't documented yet. There's also talk about
Okay.
an entitlement that
Hmm.
basically allows an app, like if you like that, it's just a named entitlement that there's named something like, oh, can always record the screen without having to like ask every time or whatever, and that is present, and you can in theory could request it, but no one knows right now, like, should apps request that? And so it's very intransparent.
Yeah.
And I
Yep.
think so I think this is part of the what I call the conscious principle part of Apple still, because
Yeah.
of course
That.
these screens are super annoying and the communication around it is horrible. But at the same time, it feels to me like this is something that actual security people dreamt up for, like actually improving your privacy. But at the same time, I
Yeah. Yeah.
said this to you before the show, but I want to like repeat it on the show. Basically,
Hmm.
is the last few episodes I've been always defending Apple about privacy. Is it
Yes.
privacy or privacy? Privacy. Um, and because I said like yes, actually, to me it feels like there's a lot of like principled people working at Apple who do their best to actually really secure privacy for its users, and I still believe that.
Yes.
But at the same time, I'm also coming around to your point of view that Apple, on top of that, at the same time, is sometimes using privacy as an excuse to to follow its business goals. Like, for example, they're
Yes.
using privacy as an excuse to why you cannot link out to an external store or payment link from an app, because that would like that might be able to like endanger the user's privacy. And I mean, in theory it could, but
Yes.
like people have been buying stuff online for a while, like that that is something that is possible. um
Yeah.
so yeah, that feels way more like an excuse. So I'm coming around to, I still think that privacy wise, Apple products are the least worst.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd
But
agree. I
at the
definitely
same
agree on
time,
that.
the there are things like the incessant, or not incessant, but like the repeated notifications and screens, info screens that just inform you helpfully about the services that Apple provides with
Yes.
Apple One and whatever, and at the same time, just like preventing others, like competitors, from doing anything that might just like hinder Apple from getting its 30% cut, and that feels very
Yes.
cynical to me.
Absolutely. And I kind of want to move on from the subject in a sense
Mm-hmm.
of like I said on a previous show, a lot of this for me is vibes driven, right? And I think there's a nice way of me dressing up the fact that I haven't looked in too deeply into some of these issues specifically. I'm picking up on what other people are saying, filing that against my own sort of view of like, oh God, again. It's like
Yeah.
a laundry list of petty grievances. But I think, it, again, just to summarize, this really is a case of like, just acknowledging those two wolves for me in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, right? And yeah, I wrestle with that. You know, um, I was never happy with the way Microsoft were behaving in the antitrust era, 20 odd years ago now. Um,
Yeah, they're doing
yeah,
way better these days. Like
yeah, they
Microsoft
are.
is doing just as much to secure market dominance, but they're doing it way smarter in a way like that makes them seem like the good guys way better.
Yeah, yeah, for
Like
sure. And
they don't want to be the desktop people anymore. They just want to be in every development stack with Visual Studio Code and like GitHub and everything, and like they're doing a great job at that. Like
yes,
it's a bit scary actually how good a job they're doing.
yep,
But yeah, like they're getting good vibes right now, whereas Apple is collecting negative aura points.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And all of this is yeah, it feels like a bit of an amorphous blob that I'm sort of working around mentally, I guess. But I think it just coalesced into a point of view that you've seen with me, where I'm looking at things like Kotlin multi-platform and that sort of stuff. Like, is there a future to just like skipping out all of this and going, well, okay, I I've got this multi-platform stack. I produce apps. I produce software in this area, and Apple then just becomes just another syndication point, effectively, of that software. And I
Mhm.
do my best to operate within the App Store. honestly, I'm a little guy in all of this. I'm probably not going to get, like treated too badly overall. And just keep moving on in life, right? Like this is just the game. This is the way things are. And Google is then just another syndication point inside of all of that. And ideal world, I'd probably have something on Linux as well, although that's a whole other kettle of bananas. Like and
Dave,
like
you
I say,
can't
to just
expect me
keep
to write
trucking.
all of these down in the titles documents.
I love that. I like taking a common phrase and not saying it quite right. But yeah, and there is no point to what I'm saying here. At the moment I'm not decided, right? There's no like, oh my god, this is the future, I've got to jump on it. I've looked at Kotlin multi-platform and Compose, it looks lovely.
Mhm.
There are some bits within it for what I want to do that are not as developed as I might want. So actually working with real-time video and filtering and that end of stuff, there'd be a lot more that I'd have to take on in owning the stack. And that feels a bit prohibitive. So I might like the UI, I might like the actual language, but yeah, do I really want to build AV Foundation, core image, all the way through to metal?
Tricky. Have
Probably
you
not.
considered looking at Flutter and Dart?
A little, yeah. So funny you should mention. Uh, a little bit. So I've been looking at that because we have a weekly developer call operating out of the Discord that we link in the show notes here, and it occurs on Monday nights New Zealand time, Monday mornings for a lot of people in the EU, and on that call, a couple of people have been looking at Flutter. One person in particular is a Flutter dev, right? And we try not to
I
discriminate. They're
am
more than
employing
welcome.
that person, I think,
Mm-hmm. And like,
as a Flutter
yeah,
dev.
yeah, and like I say, on those terms, the Discord is not exclusionary, so it's quite nice. Uh, what I have seen, Daniel, from those people talking about it is just the sheer joy they've had of some of the developer experience, like hot reloading as they go with the UI. So every time you save a file, the simulator or the device hooked up just refreshes and shows it you. Like some of that stuff's really neat. And then as I dug a bit deeper myself, what I found is there's a lot of packages out there. There's a lot of bits already formed at quite a good level of maturity in the stack. Like I've kind of blinked and missed this over the last however many years since Flutter came out.
Yeah, because it seems like a very Google-centric technology, right? So us very Apple-centric people are usually dismiss it, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I've seen
Um,
good things as well, especially because it seems to be like multi-platform from the start,
mhm.
which among other things mean that you can decide at some point in your stack, like, hey, if I'm on this operating system, then just switch to native code for this operating system, and then like
Yes,
implement something twice or three times or whatever.
yeah. And there is that potential route. I the other thing that gives me a bit of an angle for what I love is that the the real time video, the accelerated GPU shaders kind of story, if you like, it's not as well formed as Apple's, right? So don't get me wrong, AV Foundation and Core Image they solve a lot of problems that I don't think is always acknowledged really, but um, over on the Flutter side, the GPU shader story is looking quite interesting. They're moving to a new stack. The promise is that you'll write your shaders once and it will compile down to something that's optimal. Um, so, for example, it's a metal
Okay.
backend on Apple. Yeah. Um, and there's a bit of work to be done over there or whatever, but it's heading in a direction that I think is quite positive. So I don't know. I think this is me going, yep, there's another thing to explore when I have time. It looks quite interesting. And it's not going to be no work, but it might be more accessible for what I want to do. So
Cool. Yeah. So maybe keep an eye on it just in case.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm not done with my Apple dev. Right, to be clear, I've got apps in the store, I've got packages that do lots of stuff to get things done. And I love working with it. So, I think I'm going to just keep cranking on that, try and ignore some of this noise as best I can, whilst also looking at things like Flutter and seeing what I might do if I wanted to be in more than one place.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I get that. I'm like in the very lucky position that I can kind of look at this from the sidelines. Like the Telemetry Deck currently doesn't have an app in the App Store. There was a plan for an app at one point, and that kind of still exists in some test flights, but like please don't use it, because it's very unfinished and incomplete. But at the same time, right now, like we have the web interface, which is of course not as polished as an app would be, but it's very usable. It's like you can use it as a web app on your phone even. But
Yep.
yeah, like I can just like do payment via Stripe. Like we are on again, off again, like discussing how to update the payment model to a more like volume based payment model. But that's like neither here nor there. But if we decide to do that, like we don't have to discuss with Apple. Like we have to talk to our
No.
customers or potential customers, which is way more direct conversation. And I don't have to be afraid that Apple will suddenly like decide that I can't do my business anymore. So
Yes.
that is really nice to not have that worry. And at the same time, like a lot of the code that I write is still in Swift, which is a fantastic language, and written in Xcode, which is a pretty good IDE.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, Xcode is fantastic. I love Xcode, especially like I started using the 16 betas now for like beta. I'm like ever since like beta 5 came out, because that's stable enough to actually use. Auto completion has gotten a lot better, and that is without the AI stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like it's just like SourceKit interpreting your source code in a better way. And yeah, it is like mighty fast. Compilation times are slightly down. It's stable out ish. So yeah, for me at least, like
Yeah.
writing my Swift packages, it is very good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? It's not any one. There's no clear perfect route between all of these balances of things. But like, if you're enjoying the tooling, you're enjoying the language, you're having fun with what you're doing, like, I think it's legitimate to ignore the other wolf, as it were, that we've described. Because you're not going to change it, you're not going to solve it. I think we can voice a bit of disquiet on it for sure, and say, no, I'm saying this makes me uncomfortable. I worry about that end of stuff with Apple. But like, certainly in your situation, you're outside of the payment system and that side of stuff, and adjacent, but you're able to have a lot of fun with that. That's to me, that's living the dream. Like, this is why.
I tell you what I miss though.
Go on.
I miss working on native apps. Like JavaScript frameworks are pretty good these days, and you can do a lot. But it just I every other day or so I'm like writing. I'm working on the UI, and I'm like, this would be so much cooler in Swift UI or even in UI Kit.
Yep.
But it's not. It's just like the reality that I live in. But yeah, this is something that I kind of miss a little bit.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And we've talked before about how much I don't really suit web development, and that end of stuff always kind of trips me up every time I've got to make a new landing page or whatever for my apps. And I hit that. I hit that wall of like, I wish I could just do this in Swift UI. Maybe one day I'll be saying, I wish I could just do this in Flutter, and then the answer to that is, you can, because Flutter has a web story to it. But
no, I'm not rewriting my entire front end in Flutter today. No, I am not.
No. And that'll have a load of edges and
maybe.
corners on it that we don't know
Should I maybe rewrite everything in Flutter?
No.
Maybe I should rewrite everything in Flutter.
Daniel, I'm saying no.
Fine.
You've got a working stack, and you know that same logic should apply to me, right? There's no world in which suddenly rewriting everything I've got in Flutter just cause is kind of a great use of my time. There's a world where I explore a proof of concept, I start to build something else on the side, and then maybe one day transition over to it, or something new is done in it. But I think, yeah, I should be looking at this. I keep talking about it. I keep having these misgivings, and I probably need to come out of the theoretical and find a project that lets me explore the code. And then I'll have a much more informed decision about what the other side, like, is the grass greener or not, I think is the question I need to answer for myself.
Good
But
luck.
yeah, I'm gonna
We'll be
need it.
right along on your journey.
But I want to talk about a couple of other things, Daniel. I'm looking down our show notes.
Oh yeah, let's
And
begin the show. That was How Are You, Dave?
yeah,
So now
exactly.
let's get into the show.
Yeah, 35 minutes in, according to the counter here. I'm sorry, dude. But yeah, so what is going on your side? I've got a note about you did a TikTok and
I
it's
did a
linked.
TikTok. So I've been debating, and I think even on the show, like what's my story after Twitter. And like actually today I talked to a potential customer, large company, like it would be really nice to get those people as a customer. And we asked them, like, how did you hear about us? And they were like, yeah, one of our developers just like threw you guys into the ring when we were talking about like what analytics stack to use. And I'm like, oh, this is so nice. So
Word of mouth.
we should continue like connecting with developers and being in a developer space, because even though like many people who actually use analytics are in marketing or
Mm-hmm.
BI or whatever, I like that. This is a space where I feel very, very welcome, and it's a space where I feel very at home because I am a developer. So yeah, so we're gonna continue continue being in that space, and like I feel very vindicated. But anyway,
Lovely.
the discussion was how, like, because like it used to be I'm on Twitter, I'm just live tweeting my anguish and pain and also like successes in developing Telemetry Deck, and that is just something that is very like feels very natural to me and is very cool and gets reach and gets word of mouth, and so
Mm-hmm.
like everyone is happy. No, the thing is, this weird guy bought Twitter. I don't know if you heard about it, and now it's kind of like an alt-right hellscape. So we are not really on Twitter anymore. Like there's an auto post of the blog post, I think.
Yeah.
And so, but the thing is, like, not everyone left Twitter. There's like I want to say 20-ish% of my developer bubble are still on Twitter. Then another 20% went to Mastodon. Then some people went to Blue Sky. Some people went to Threads. I still can't really figure out Threads, but I try to be on there every now and then. And it's
Yep.
like the rest kind of went into Discord or Slacks or just like dropped off
Yeah.
the face of the earth, kind of like is not in the public internet anymore, or is on Reddit or whatever. Kind of
Yep.
everything's kind of splintering apart, right? So I'm like, I've been discussing also with Lisa, like which channels should we be really present on, because we can't be everywhere because that's just like too much work. Should we be on
Yep.
YouTube? Should we be there? Should we be there? And I was thinking, like, even our automated clips from our podcast, right? Like even those
Yep.
posted to TikTok get pretty good views. Like people kind of
Yeah.
hear about our podcast this way. Also on YouTube. So I was thinking maybe the future of social media is now, short form video. As much as I kind of am afraid of that because I don't feel as photogenic as some people.
Oh
Um,
man.
but I do have a blue beard, so that gives me like plus 10 advantage
Yes.
already.
It does.
So I've been thinking I should just experiment with that. So Telemetry Deck has a TikTok account already, and so I was like, okay, what can I post on there? And so my first post was kind of like or not the first, but like the post that I made was a 3-minute explainer video on how Apple does phased rollout, where we can see
Okay.
in the telemetry data that they kind of roll out to 5% ish of device. Like new updates are usually rolled out to
Yep.
around 5%. Then a few weeks later, they go to 25%, then 50 or 60 or 70. Like it's a bit unclear. And then just like up to everyone else. And then you just have a few stragglers who kind of click on not now every time. And I kind of tried to connect this to the CrowdStrike outage, because that's exactly what CrowdStrike did not do. They released the
Yes.
infamous update to every single device that's connected to them at once, and that's kind of that was like the biggest problem with that whole outage.
It really was. Yes.
And so yeah, that was actually very successful. It got like, I don't know, 1,000 views. It goes like a bunch of reposts. Like not so successful for a big TikTok account, but for no one knows this TikTok account. This is actually like, this makes me want to like at least continue doing this for a while. So yeah, like I feel emboldened, and I'm like, okay, I need to find more ideas to talk about. And I think I'm overthinking this. I think I should like just every day sit down and be like, hey, I can explain this because it's on my mind right now.
Yeah.
And it's like tangentially related to analytics, just because I work in the analytics space, right?
You
And
got to
so that's the
go.
goal.
I think you got to go with whatever feels like straightforwards.
Yeah, because it needs to be it needs to feel authentic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had some plans to pull together a load of like how-to videos for my apps and stuff that I still haven't done. I think there's value to me doing it and actually doing it as sort of short form video and syndicating it out to TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And that's the thing, right? You can actually produce once and send many to some of this
Yes, I
fragmented
did that. I
landscape.
posted the same video on Reels and YouTube
Yeah.
Shorts. Well,
Yeah.
I didn't put it on YouTube Shorts because YouTube Shorts have to be below a minute.
Hmm.
I don't know what to do about that. I could post it as a video, but it's like it's portrait, so it doesn't really feel right.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I have to think about this some more. But like on Reels, it kind of didn't get any traction. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to continue posting them on Instagram Reels, as of course, as well.
I was going to say, for the sake of an upload and copy and pasting the description or whatever, like it to me it feels like it's worth being in multiple places, but perhaps yeah, swerving your X, as it were, on that one. Not that people are really posting short form video there on the regular, I guess, in the same way as TikTok, but it's interesting to me. I think like you said, okay, you went from having a small account, no real followers, to then suddenly getting 1,000 views with that video. Like, and then what it says to me is that TikTok's algorithm's pretty bloody good at surfacing stuff to people that are interested in it. I'd guess.
It is like, I mean, of course, I'm very sure that if I continue posting, then it will be even better. But I
Yes.
think what it does is like, it will just like randomly show new videos to 200-ish random people, and then
Hmm.
kind of based on whether they continue watching or if they like the video, then like kind of decide which bubble to post it to.
Yeah.
And that's like super interesting. It kind of works like on me too, like on my private YouTube, TikTok account. Like I get a lot of stuff that is actually interesting to me. So yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
That's cool.
on watching it back, I realized I sound bad, because usually when I hear my voice, it is recorded through this here microphone. So it sounds pretty good because it's like a decent microphone, right? But like that
Hmm.
was recorded just through my phone's built-in microphone. And now I know why so many TikTok people have like some kind of Bluetooth microphone like just held up to their mouth, because it just sounds way better. Or the other thing
Yeah.
that TikTokers do is like they have the plug-in Apple EarPods with the microphone pod, and just like have that very close to their mouth. And so what I did
Yes.
was I used the business Amazon account to order plug-in Apple earphones for $15.
Hey,
That's my
that's
investment in the future of this company.
right. And the future of this company is short form video.
let's see about that. Like I'm still finding it very hard to get over the hump of like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna post something,
Yeah.
because I like, I can't just dance because I'm not a very good dancer.
Hmm.
And even that, like requires a lot of preparation. I think, the huge
Yeah.
amount of respect to the people who do these really complicated dances and choreographies, right? But no, I have to have something to say, and that needs to be reasonably thought out. So, like, you have to put in the same amount of thinking, I think, like as you would in a Twitter thread. But then you
Hmm.
just like write down the Twitter thread, and then you kind of, or at least like have it in your head, and then like just read it off, or like just say it out.
Yeah.
And I feel self-conscious, Dave. I feel so self-conscious. So yeah, I'm just gonna try and have fun with it, not take myself too seriously, and at the same time explore what's out there, and also find ways of like getting over that hump of conscience.
Oh,
Conscience.
I have some
I mean, it
ideas
worked
of
for this
approaches.
podcast, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I was going to say, like, there's. So if I think about what works with this podcast, is there's two of us and we bounce off each other, and certainly if I was to be, and I've tried this, right? I had a solo short podcast that I called Iterate, and I managed about 7 or 8 episodes at most, I think, before I canned it because it just felt weird talking to myself.
Yeah, I get
Like
that.
I didn't enjoy it. Um,
Yeah.
but I think maybe there's a thread to pull there. Like, I'm not suggesting you start a telemetry deck specific podcast or like a show that's just about it. But like, if you think about the sort of typical questions you're getting asked, like if there's commonality to some of those, people are always asking how to go and do blah. Um, if you think about
Oh, that's tricky.
the the monthly reports that you write up, the industry reports and things that you do to sort of break down operating system splits. So I guess I'm sort of saying anything that might become a blog post could be something you kind of talk to because you've already done that thinking. It's just that it doesn't exist in video form. That could be another way of getting a bit of bang for buck on that sort of thinking. The reason I suggested answering typical questions is because then the customers asking questions becomes your co-host, becomes the thing you're bouncing
I've been
off.
thinking about that. The thing is, either our user interface is now good enough that people just
Yeah,
like are able to deal with it, or that it's so bad that they kind of give up and don't even ask the questions. But the questions that I get are mostly like, how do I write this very complicated query? Which I can answer. And I have built something new that will help answer me these things faster. But at the same time, it
yeah.
doesn't really lend itself to video content
Nah,
or short form.
no,
Um,
and
yeah,
and it's not good for lead generation. I guess it's more in the support category because lead generation really. I guess you should be talking about the type of problems customers have before they come to you, and then how that can be solved with telemetry
yeah.
deck.
But maybe I can like take inspiration from like customer calls,
Yeah,
like the one I had
yeah.
today.
So from
That might
from
be
some of your
cool.
sales calls, yeah, yeah. Um,
I gotta tell you about the thing I built. Like, so close the TikTok topic.
hmm
Open the
And
Daniel built something cool topic.
let's close out on this topic because I'm going to have to start the rest of my day shortly, Daniel. We're recording early in the morning here for me.
Right.
Um,
Okay. Give
but
me
go
five
for it.
minutes, just
Go on.
because I am incredibly. I feel like I feel so smart right now. I feel galaxy brain smart. So, um, telemetry deck queries. You can use the editor to like query the telemetry database, but it is limited. It doesn't have the full feature set. But if you want to have the full feature set, you kind of have to write JSON based queries by hand, right? And that's very complicated because you don't really know. Like, there's documentation that we have, but you don't really know what are all the options. And also, like, for each thing, like, even I always have to look up, like, oh, okay, I'm using a selector filter. Like, does it does the property, is the property named value, or is it named something else? Is it named field or whatever?
Yep.
um but and so for ages I've been pushed ahead of me the idea of like creating a user interface that just like creates this complicated telemetry query structure for me. But the problem is, it is just a lot, right? Because I would basically need to write a component for every um property that a query has, but like these properties can have subcomponents, like for example, I don't know, for filters.
Gotcha.
Like basically, we have a filter editor that works that way, but like for the whole query thing, it's just like too much, right? And so last weekend, I was like, oh, it's the weekend. I can just like noodle around with stuff. I don't have to work on productive stuff. I'm just going to have like do an experiment. And I was like, what if I define a schema and then the user interface kind of builds itself after that schema? And so it turns out there's a thing called JSON schema that describes how JSON, like how a JSON object needs to be specified. Like it's basically like how you define a struct in Swift, right?
Yep.
So you say like, okay, it has these 4 properties, and these properties have these like are these kind of structs, and this is required, this is not required, this is a string, this is an int, whatever. And from that definition, you totally can build an interface. So now I've not created like one component per thing, per property for that. Like I built a string editing component, a int editing component, and components for managing arrays and objects, which just then are kind of recursive, right? And that like worked surprisingly well.
Hell yeah.
Over the last week, like one of my projects that I kind of worked on off and on, like whenever I was not doing anything else, was actually finishing that. And now you can, if you have a custom query in Telemetry Deck, you can actually now use your mouse to edit that query, even though it is JSON behind it.
That's fantastic.
And I'm mighty proud of that. It's not the best UI yet, as in it feels a bit clunky and it has a few too many lines visually and stuff like that. But it's way better than writing them by hand, and I kind of optimize from here.
Do you have a post, a video, or a blog that I could link that talks about it? Okay,
not yet. I'm so going to have to write something. But the other thing is like my coworker Chihat has been writing working a lot on the Swift 6 features for the Telemetry Deck SDK, and so we have a blog post about that, and that kind of took precedence. Whoops!
Oh yeah,
I touched my computer.
Yeah, I just want to show listeners of the show something visual as to what you're talking about, like a Mastodon.
I have a toot. I have a toot.
Yeah, a toot will do. A toot will definitely do.
Toot will do. You have to talk for 2 minutes while I find this toot, but I'm done with this topic. So
okay. Yeah. Well, let's wrap the show. You can find the toot. So yeah. I'm going to read the outro while you're toot finding, Daniel.
Please do.
So, yes, thanks for listening, dear listener, and please rate us on iTunes and YouTube. Send us emails at contact@waitingforreview, and join the Discord. It's linked in the show notes, and we definitely love to have new people joining that Discord who are in the community. It's awesome. But yeah, before... now it's written for you to read it, Daniel. So it's where can people find you, Dave? And you're still toot finding, so I'll answer my own question. This is kind of fun. You can find me on Mastodon at dave@social.lightbeamapps.com. And you can find me on Instagram as lightbeamapps.com, all one word. .com is spelled .com. And yeah, that's me. Daniel, where can people find you?
Go to TikTok and search for Telemetry Deck.
Ooh, feed that algorithm. Love it. Love it.
Yeah. I did find the toot. I added it to the show notes, so we can
excellent.
We can just link to that.
Right. Well, take care, Daniel. Catch you soon.
Yeah, see you soon, Dave. This was fantastic. See you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And now we don't stop recording because this is the unofficial after show that only if you are a Patreon subscriber that at least gives us like, I don't know, $500 a month. Is that how much we're selling the after show for?
Yeah, I guess so. And we're going to do everything outside of Apple, so we get 100% of the cut after Patreon.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, this was a nice show. I like this. I kind of didn't grab my beer during the show because I didn't want to have it on video. But do you see that fantastic logo of this guy?
Yeah. Just hold it back just a little bit further back.
No, I
There we
think
go.
I have
No, no.
background
Oh,
blur on. Hang on.
yeah, you do.
Yeah,
You do.
portrait.
Damn it.
It still has background
Oh,
blur. Right? Oh no, this is better.
oh no, that is clearer. That is clearer. Hey. Okay. He's happy. He's got a beer.
just a little drunk guy.
Brilliant. I'm trying to think of what's going on in my workspace that doesn't get shown on the show. It's only something I've got. I may need to do the blur on mine as well, but I have a transformer.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like my new desk buddy. His name's
Oh,
Bulkhead.
he's so cool. I've been like taking space shuttles into the new office. Turns out I have a lot of space shuttles. I didn't even realize.
Nice.
Like I still have the big Lego one here, but like I have the
If you
plus
can
one
take
in
them
the
into
office
the
now.
office and then
And I have
not
this
feel
one.
bereft of space shuttles at home, then you've definitely got many space shuttles.
Yeah, no,
That's
I have
cool.
like enough space shuttles at home. I also have my space shuttle cup that I still have at home.
I forgot, Daniel. Have you seen a space shuttle launch?
No,
No.
my space age kind of started after they shut down the program,
Okay, that's a shame.
which is such a shame. But yeah, I kind of became like as a kid, I was like super into space, but like I kind of became space aware when I was starting like really getting into Kerbal Space Program.
Yeah,
and then I kind of hyper focused on the whole topic for a long time, and I kind of still am. But yeah, it's been I don't know. Like when did the last space shuttle fly? Like 2008, 2009, something like that.
yeah. I
And
don't know.
I didn't even think of going there. Like I was.
We have a family friend who did at the time.
Oh,
Saw one of
nice.
the last launches. Yeah, spent a lot of time in that part of the world at the time.
Yeah,
And we
when
were
I
getting photographs
spent
back.
some time in San Francisco, I kind of wanted to, like every time they announced a space launch from Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is kind of a few hundred clicks south of San Francisco. Sometimes they launch northwards if they want to go into an orbital trajectory that kind of takes them over the poles, right? Because that's perfect for spy satellites.
Yep.
And so, like, whenever a launch was announced, I would go up to Twin Peaks, which is these like the two little hills above the city,
Yep.
and try to see. But they always got either canceled or like were covered by cloud coverage, and therefore invisible. So that was kind of sad. But at one point, I really want to see a spacecraft launch. That would be really nice.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We get them here. We get satellite launches and stuff going up.
Oh, you got that? What are they called? Adam? No.
No, I don't know. It's on the South Island somewhere. I think.
Yeah. Oh, what's it called?
Yeah.
What's it called? I don't know. But yeah, those are cool.
Yeah.
Augsburg has its own space-led company now, RFA, Rocket Factory Augsburg. They launch from Scotland though.
Yep. No, that makes sense.
But they build their rockets here, which is kind of nice. And
cool.
I'm like, I've been like, kind of like, like, can I somehow like get in that factory and like just get to know people just because I'm really into that kind of thing. So
are they interested in privacy first analytics?
So what I did actually was I met at a business event, actually at the fuck up night, which is where startups tell go on stage and tell about their biggest fuck ups.
I love that. Yeah.
I met an intern who was working there, so I know I have one LinkedIn contact with the company with an intern.
Okay.
So I'm working my way up the chain.
Yeah, you should. No, I've got visions of you then pivoting into telemetry on board these things.
I mean, that was like the startup I tried to do before Telemetry Deck, right?
Yeah, for space.
Not telemetry, but like, basically like managing data in space. Like, have I never told you that story?
No. I remember the Libido app, and I remember
the Libido app was afterwards.
Privacy search
that was kind of
thing. Yeah. Keep going.
So before the Libido app. I think that was before. Might have been like in parallel. But basically, I was unhappy with my job, and then a friend who who I know from a previous job was like, "Hey, are you still really into space?" And I'm like, "Yes, why?" And he's like, "Yeah, because I have this buddy, and he kind of wants to create a startup."
Mm-hmm.
And so I met the buddy, and he was like, do you know what a CubeSat is? And I'm like, I do know what a CubeSat is, but for you, basically, it's a satellite that is 10 by 10 by 10 centimeters.
Yep.
It's usually built using phone hardware, so it's very cheap to build, and it's also less than a kilo. So it's
Yep.
actually very easy to launch, and like hundreds of these things regularly get launched as secondary payloads. So like just like to take a ride in any rocket that goes up
Yep.
to
Yeah.
carry
Yeah.
just a few CubeSats. They don't have a huge amount of power because they only have the solar panels that kind of fit to the outside of the cube,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have a lot of heat
They're
dissipation,
cute.
so they can't. Sorry.
They're cute. They're like these just
Yeah.
these little things floating up there. You know.
Yeah, the biggest thing is actually heat dissipation, because like you can get a lot of energy from the sun, but if you use that energy, then that generates heat, which in space it's
Mm-hmm.
very hard to dissipate, right?
Yep.
And so because of that, they cannot use very strong radios. And
Mm-hmm.
so the problem is like the thing kind of gathers data for a whole orbit, but is only above its ground station for 10 minutes or so of that orbit, where it has like
Yeah.
the angle is good enough so it can like beam down data with low energy, right? And so
Yep.
that will never get down all the data. Like you will get about 10 to 20% of the data that the thing collects, you will actually be able to use, which is a shame. And
Yep.
so this guy was like, hey, I am the he was a rocket physics, like an engine physics guy, explosion physics guy at Arianespace, right, for the Ariane rocket.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I have connections into the space industry, and we can build like slightly bigger satellites that speak the same radio frequencies, and then kind of receive the data from the CubeSats, and then because we have bigger satellites, kind of beam them down. We'd be the relay satellites.
Yeah.
And so
Some sort of mesh type scenario kind of springs to mind here. Yeah.
So we kind of got into that. Like the company was going to be called Orbital Data, which is now the name of my my part of the Telemetry Deck company, actually. So we had that the original buddy who kind of introduced me to the other guy, who is a embedded systems programmer. We had a guy from Apple who like did a lot of work on Xsurf and on disk drives and stuff like that, because like in space you kind of need to like store data very like in triplicate or more, because like there's like just like free ions whizzing through and they kind of flip your bits, right? And
that sounds fun.
Just getting my bits flipped. We had someone else. Anyway, we had another embedded systems guy kind of, and so
how far did you get? I've got to know, like how close
we had
to
a deal
launch
with not very close, but we had a deal with OHB, which makes satellite buses. So basically empty satellites. Mm-hmm. It's like a satellite that does nothing except keep itself in space. So it has solar panels, it has a tiny little engine, it has reaction control systems, stuff like that. And you can kind of put in your own payload in there. So we had a deal with OHB, which is a Bremen-based company who built these kind of things. To supply us with a few of those. We were at ESA, the European Space Agency, for like they were kind of like we're not going to give you money, but we're going to give you like access to experts. And so we had like a few Airbus employees and a few ESA employees just like on speed dial basically for questions, which was very nice. Yeah. Also, they got us access to their laser terminals, which is basically like one way to get data from space is not via radio, but if you buy one, like if you attach a freaking laser, like the thing is like a tube that's like 10 centimeters across, right? And I want to say 30, 40 centimeters long. And that thing can like send down data very quickly to Earth. But you have to, or to another satellite. So they have, ESA has relay satellites to receive these laser beams in GEO. And so you kind of just beam to them. But the thing is, like, we had a prototype of that laser thing in the office, and it's like you were not allowed to put your finger inside the laser because that would actually like hurt you properly.
Yep.
And what we also had was prototypes for ETL pipelines. That was my whole thing. Like ETL
to marshal the data and bring it down. Yeah.
And so I was like trying to build an infrastructure where most of that stuff was happening on the satellites, so that you could write algorithms to decide whether the data was worth it for you before like incurring all that bandwidth costs of getting stuff down. But you could totally like just like download everything because we got it from the CubeSats, right? And of course you have like all these modules that kind of work together, but like every step of the way you need to kind of like do the calculations and triplicate as well, and then kind of do vote on the result and stuff like that. So that was kind of my contribution to the whole thing. We went as far as there's a thing for startup founders called Exist, which you apply for, and then they help you founding the actual the corporation.
Yep.
And also they pay your salaries for a year, which is very cool, of course.
It's very cool.
The thing is,
excuse me, just
what are you doing?
It's a standing desk.
I can do that too, you see. Because I can move my chair.
But the other one is I could. Yeah. Anyway, you were mid-flow, so keep going.
One of the possible co-founders was just getting really on my nerves. Because he kind of discovered that I get really annoyed when people like this was during the Trump presidency, right?
Yeah.
And so he discovered that I get really annoyed when you continually say Trump slogans at me.
Yep.
And he thought this was like super funny to be like, haha, I'm just like saying like slightly racist shit just like because it gets a rise out of you.
Oh dear.
And in the end, that was kind of like there was like a time where I was like, okay, I need to decide now whether to get off this ship or go full steam ahead, right? Because once we apply for Exist, you cannot basically per person, you can only apply for that once, even if you like create another startup after that. And so I was like, if I burn this Exist chance, then like this has to be it, right?
Yeah. And you were getting signals
a few days
that it wasn't going to be
searching. I was like, I do not want to spend the next 5 years in an office with this person. Like, I just like I wouldn't be happy.
Mm-hmm.
So in the end, I was like, I was meeting the other people, and I was like, I'm out. I'm sorry. Here's all my code. Here's everything.
Yeah.
But the thing is, then like most of the like all the other people were also like, oh, if Daniel's not with us anymore, then
Yep.
Which was good for my ego, and so that's kind of why I kept the domain name and the company name and everything.
I have to go. I'm sorry, Daniel. I've got to run.
That was the story of how I almost founded a space startup.
Are you still kind of good in the future? Nothing stops you from having a
Telemetry Deck
in
space.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna buy SpaceX at some point.
I'm trying to think. There's a way there of like it's what is it in space? Nobody can hear you scream, and mentally, I'm kind of linking that to the fact that Telemetry Deck doesn't record stuff that is unnecessary. Like nobody can hear you. Nah, I can't get there.
Yeah, but I can see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
But, all right, I'll let you go to work.
Yeah,
it's like 2022 midnight here, so I probably need to go to bed.
But dude, lovely to catch you as always, man. And the holding really microphone thing, it's a game changer. It's nice.
It feels like I've seen this on TikTok actually with like other podcasters who are more conversational, less tech focused. And I think we're somewhere in the middle there. We are tech focused, but we are all just like having a conversation as well. It feels more loosey goosey. You can do fun stuff.
Yes. So on that note, take care and
see you, mate.
I look forward to speaking to you soon, dude.
Yeah.
Bye.